Welcome to Build Out Brief. This is Jim Kunkel, and I so appreciate your support of the Build Out live stream that broadcasts each Wednesday at noon Eastern Daylight Time. The live stream that you're watching right now will be starting in just 1 minute. Let me take this opportunity to talk about Build Out Brief. This content series is a result of viewers like you who overwhelmingly requested that I add a supplemental series to Build Out that centers on professional business topics, is more focused, and global on guests. If you're thinking about starting a live stream, then StreamYard is a platform for you. It's what I use to build you Build Out Brief. After the stream, see the comment or the description section for my special savings referral link. Now, when it comes to having a professional live stream and winning over viewers, you need to make sure that your graphics and supporting promotional items are the best. All of the creative content for Build Out and Build Out Brief are designed and produced with Canva. You should check out Canva. See the comment or description section for my special Canva referral link. I'm Jim Kunkel, and welcome to Build Out Brief. Joining me this evening for the second part of our series is MJ Callaway. MJ, welcome.
Hi, Jim. It is great to be back.
It's great to have you. On Monday of this week, you and I talked about establishing SMART goals. And what SMART goals are, they are specific actions that need to be achieved. They are very measurable, where you're able to kind of benchmark them against revenue goals and performance. They're achievable, which means that they're very realistic and there's something that can be done. Relevant, they align with your goals and the mission of your company or your organization, and that they're time bound. You're able to get them accomplished within the annual calendar or the business year for the organization or company. So now that we have established SMART goals, you and I are going to talk about really getting them and supercharging the sales for an organization or a company. And when we look at SMART goals, the first thing that a goal is, it's going to help increase revenue or some other type of measurable activity or result. When we look at increasing revenue or growing an organization, how critical is that when it comes into the alignment of the SMART goals?
It definitely is important, and it also depends upon what the salesperson's quota is. And hopefully every company has a quota for their sales team, or they have some type of, key producer, so some indicators there. And if they don't, that would be the first step, is to figure out, what do you want as some type of a goal or a target? So sometimes it is a revenue base, sometimes it is a unit, 3, your quota is 3 for this month, or your quota could be, $10,000 in sales. So having that established first is the most important. The other thing is, for goals, is to know, what is your closing rate? What are you closing 1 in 15, as I had mentioned before? If you haven't watched the first episode, you do want to go back and see it. Are you closing 1 in 5? So look at what your closing rate is, because that can help you not only achieve those goals, but also it can help you determine, where you're losing sales or where you're gaining sales. So looking at those two measures. And Jim, we talked about the SMART goals, having doable goals, because if those goals are not doable, then people will lose their mojo, especially in sales, because you get into your head, you have all that verbal chatter going on. You get into a slump. So we do want to make sure that they are doable goals.
That is very important to also, to your point, look at all the statistics are out there, but also to look at the general state of the industry. Maybe your goals need to be adjusted because of current economic or other type of conditions that might exist. So having that ability to be flexible is important as well. Another important element related to really, supercharging your sales, we rely so much, organizations and companies rely so much on their current existing customers to continue to buy And a lot of the sales and revenue generation comes from a specific number of customers. So a goal that you really need to have is to make sure that you don't have churn. You're not losing your good customers. In fact, what you want to do is you want to do the intensity and turn it up a little bit to get a little bit more out of your existing customers. How can you focus on your current customers, and then how do you get them to go to even more of a buying level?
So with it, it's definitely making that relationship. The better the relationship is, the more business they will do with you, and they will increase it. And I'll go back to the transportation company that I was talking about. They do a lot within the healthcare industry. So they might get one move, but if they give that black tie experience, as my friend Bob calls it, or that white glove experience and that trust, and they don't have any type of damage and they do it on time, and the staff is great, and they're very just wonderful to the team that they're working with, then they're going to trust them with the next project and then the next project. So it's a way to increase that business. The other way too is there a gap in products? Is there something that you don't have that your customers are asking for that you can create that's going to up that revenue? So that's another idea. And I want to bounce back a minute to the goals. We need doable goals, but we also need stretch goals. Not those BHAG goals, those big, hairy, audacious goals, but some stretch goals. And I'll go back to whenever I had worked for the national builder. The sales quota was 3 a month. So we would have 3 homeowner manuals in our desks ready to go. However, instead of 3, I always had 6. So because my goal was I wanted to sell 6. And then when I got to the point where I was selling 5 and 6, then I upped it to 8 and 9. So I was always upping it in increments that made sense, that were still doable, but it was a stretch goal. So having those stretch goals are another way that we can increase business. But going back to really taking care of our customers. When we take care of our customers take care of us.
So you work for a national builder, and in looking at, as a sales professional, most people in the profession have certain movies that they really gravitate around. Let's call them sales meetings, and I'm not talking about specifically Tommy Boy. What I'm talking about is the play that was adapted into a movie, Glenn Ross. And so what always resonated with me was the part when they're talking about the leads are good, and they're talking about leads. And that goes to the next element in our discussion here related to supercharging, your sales, that leads are gold, but leads are raw and they have to be qualified. How critical are leads to a company or an organization?
Oh my goodness, they are so critical, because without leads, you don't have a pipeline. And also not only having those leads, but knowing where those leads are coming from. Whether it's individually, you're doing it through prospecting, or the company is paying for some type of marketing. In one company that I worked for, they did a number of things. They did radio, they did TV, and they did billboards. So whenever somebody would come in, first question I would ask is, how did you hear about us? What was crazy was at that time, billboards was the number one reason people came in.
It's so interesting.
Yes.
In times when you're really looking at the lead qualification, and I've encountered this myself, not to say that I fell into this trap. There are sales representatives who will say, oh, these are really poor quality leads. And then I've actually had the occasion as a manager to take those leads that sales rep didn't want and reassign them to a senior person or someone who's a little bit more, maybe let's say they're at a different level when it comes to working with prospects. And I've actually seen some really what was considered poor quality leads turned into opportunities. Now, that being said, that might be viewed as a really negative thing to that person, taking it from one person. But it's a learning opportunity for them to see that, listen, the leads that you got were very good. It's just we need to work on your technique And then also too, a lot of it is in your mind. You have to really think positively. And again, it comes down to what we mentioned in that last episode. A lot of times people have a fear of picking up the phone and calling and talking to people, to listen to them, to ask them probing questions, to better qualify them. In most of the cases, in my experience, it's been that someone has sent an email out to a lead and said, I understand you're interested in our product. Are you looking to buy? Can I answer any questions for you? And they get back, all I want is information, or I'm okay. They really didn't take the time to pick up that phone and talk to people. Most of the time, even today, when I talk to people, I try not to send emails, because you can fall into such a trap with an email where you can close the door, you can end a communication too quickly, and you might not be able to pick up on the subtle nuances of the tonality of the person, in the words that they're saying, and the mannerisms. Maybe if you're meeting with them face to face, their expressions. There's so many things that go in there, like reading the tea leaves, to be able to qualify that prospect, but also too, to have a better understanding exactly what part of the cycle are they in. Are they somebody that has the funding? They don't have the funding? Are they just looking for information? Or are they really having a major pain point? And this is somebody that's probably going to be a quicker close than a longer prospect for you.
Definitely finding out where they are in the sales cycle. I mean, and we can't always do that through email. And there are some times where it is better to, and I'm just going to say where I am right now with my company, as I will send an email intro, and then right after that, I am picking up the phone. Give them about an hour or so. And I'm like, hey, just wanted you to hear the voice that went with the email. So if you can do a double team, if you're going to do email, make that phone call. And then same with if you make the phone call and you get voicemail, because right now we're getting a lot of voicemails because people are not in the office. So they can let it go to, they're working remotely. They can let it go to voicemail. And then you can, if you do that, you get a voicemail, then you can go ahead and send an email. But I always look at, how can I add value? Either way, whether it's a phone call or it's an email, what can I give them that's of value to them? So it might be an industry report, it might be an infographic, but it is something. If I am doing some type of a cold call, I want to give them something of value that goes with that cold call.
Yeah, and the other thing on top of that, great recommendations on that too. If you have an adequate CRM system and you go through and let's say you do, to whatever extent you can, you successfully qualify that prospect. Again, whatever indicators they give you, those are things that you can execute on at a future date by putting in your CRM, your customer relationship management software or application, whatever you're using, and to be able to reach back out to them and say, hey, MJ, you and I talked 6 months ago. I know you weren't in the market to get this. We had this product got upgraded. Is that something that might be of interest to you? And again, you're just probing to try to see exactly where they're at in that stage. When it comes to the prospecting element too, I just want everyone to look at that. If you have a lead, don't try to qualify it. And if it doesn't look like it's going to turn into anything, don't throw it away.
Right.
You have to really qualify it, to understand it, but also schedule it accordingly. And maybe there is no opportunity. Maybe it's a lead that's not going to go anywhere. But at least you have the opportunity to re-engage later, or maybe you have the wrong level of the authority that you're talking with. Maybe you need to go up the food chain a little bit to be able to talk to the true buyer or the person who's going to be the decision maker, and to influence them as well. On our last episode, we were talking about the reliance on your customers, your existing customers, that really generate a lot of your revenue and your activity. And so leads are super critical, because give a good example. I work for an industrial fastener company back in, I think it was in the late 80s. And that industrial fastener company relied so heavily on one customer for about 90% of the business. And the goal when I was brought on board was to try to minimize that, get that down to a 50-50. We got it down to probably about a 70-30, but we were struggling to get it even better because we just did not have the manpower to be able to generate that type of activity. And unfortunately for that company, very unsuccessful in working with what we had. And eventually that industrial customer got sold to a larger industrial customer, and we totally lost out, and the business unfortunately went under. So a lot of times when you're looking at prospects, they're critical to help future-proof your
Yes.
company or your organization. And also too, they will really kind of in a way help you understand exactly the product or services that you're offering. Are they still relevant in today's market, or let's say in the near future? So a lot of times you're getting a lot of good, useful information, even from the leads that might not turn exactly into a quick deal for you. Let's go ahead and let's move to the next element of this. And when we're talking about goals are going to really reflect a minimum. And you had mentioned earlier about stretch goals. What are stretch goals?
Stretch goals are a few above which your actual quota happens to be, whether it's revenue or per unit. So it's a few above. In my case, I always try to do double of as my stretch goal, because I thought even if I get halfway there, it's better than putting that, okay, I'm just sticking to what my quota is. So, but when you have that stretch goal, it can be 2 above, 3 above, but I always like to do, double of whatever it is.
The team in the first episode, I mentioned about managing a team of roughly about a dozen. We would have stretch goals and to really help take away, let's say, the pain and the thought that can happen. So a lot of people say, listen, you set my goal. Now you want me to do double? Are you kidding me? And there are ways to deal with that. And if you incentivize people, or you make contests, you make activities. And a lot of times what we would do, we would have certain type of stretch goals, and we would throw things, maybe it's giving out scratch off tickets, or having certain things such as some type of a party once a quarter to celebrate our success. It could be financial incentives as well. And it looked to reward people, not just for achieving the goal, but if you break down the activity that's needed to meet a goal, and we were talking about not the aspects of metrics, but the production that goes into it, you can incentivize the production as well. So that if you have a team that's supposed to generate a proposal for an outside rep to go in to close the deal, that maybe you incentivize the proposal process. But then again, like I said, you have a lot of checks and balances in place so that people aren't just generating a proposal just so that they can make an extra $25 or $50. How do you view incentives when it comes to really help fortifying and focusing on stretch goal performance?
I love incentives. Being in sales, we are competitive. Salespeople are competitive. It doesn't matter. We are competitive. And when there is a contest to win or some type of incentive, we're upping our game. So yes, absolutely, I am a fan of them. And having been on the receiving end of a number of contest wins, I would definitely say, yes, put them into place. And like you said, they can be small, they can be something like a pizza party or, and they can also be big. It wasn't a huge win, but I won a big screen TV. So, and because I didn't want the TV, I wanted a laptop instead. They gave me $1,000 gift card. And some of my clients, they're giving away trips. So it definitely does make a difference if you do offer incentives.
Yeah, you just don't want to do like a Christmas vacation in Art Griswold and Jelly of the Month versus the cash bonus for the swimming pool.
Definitely not. But it can also be recognition. Maybe that person gets the Employee of the Month parking spot right in front of the building. But there's other ways. There's, being recognized every month. We had, in one of the companies I worked with, we had the Fab Five. So the top 5 people every week, their name would go out to the entire company. So, and that was a recognition. People loved it. And that one did come with a small gift card. So it came with a gift card. It was a $50 gift card, but $50 is $50.
It really does make a difference. It's just amazing sometimes something as simple as recognition can be very powerful and very motivating for people. Let's move on to talking about something that always I'm reminded of in the organization I work with, and a lot of times I hear this too with other companies. Every staff person, every employee is a salesperson, and that we all have goals. Your company, your organization has goals, and then your goals feed into the overall goals for the company or the organization. You really have to make everyone feel part ownership in all that. And give you a good example. MJ, you might have been in this before. I've worked jobs that were salaried in sales and then also commission based.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been times where the sales team becomes the, let's call it the scapegoat or the hated group for a company that they're struggling to reach that goal. There's incentives tied in for the whole company if we hit it, and it's those salespeople's fault. That really doesn't tie in the whole organization to pull together. And what are some of your recommendations to the business owners you work with on really tying everything together when it comes to goals, making everybody feel that they're all part of the goals?
Oh my goodness, Jim, you hit that. The one company that I did work with, when I was in corporate America, the call center was pitted against the salespeople, and the salespeople were pitted against the project managers. So it was, and unfortunately, the only ones who were commission-based were the salespeople. So the call center got a salary plus commission, and the project managers got a salary plus commission. But the salespeople, if there were DFTs because of the project managers, the salespeople lost out. And if the call center qualified something as a good lead and it went into their bucket as a good lead, but it wasn't, they rated it an A or B instead of a D, again, that was put on the salesperson, which was unfair. So going back to, it's the overall goal. So going from beginning to end. So with it is, in that company, the salespeople had DFTs, deal fell through. But what if everybody was responsible for those DFTs? If the front end was responsible and the back end was responsible, not only, and also executives, the GMs, everybody was responsible for those DFTs rather than only the salesperson. And then going back to, does that company, do they have a mission? What is their mission? Is it, to serve the clients, and everyone has to be on board to serve the clients, not only the salesperson who's in a commission base, but everybody. And are the front end and the back end, are they responsible for something that happens for the customer to go away? So making everybody responsible, not only the salesperson or the sales team.
It just makes a better work environment when you don't have pitted against silo.
Absolutely.
And so it's so important to be able to have that focus on the goals. Earlier we were talking about, goals. You have a minimum level set goal, then you have your stretch goals on top of that. In today's business environment, I know this might sound counterproductive to goal and achieving goals, but you really have to have a little bit of flexibility built into your goals as well. And what I mean by that, if you're doing a quarterly, you're doing a semi-annual, you're doing, a review at the end of the year, you want to be able to make sure that you had the ability to adjust and give you good examples. There could be times where, and this happened to me one time, I had a goal set and a customer's business interaction with another customer created an opportunity where it doubled sales activity that I had. Now that's a fluke, that's a rarity,
yes.
But that's a great problem to have. Now that situation could cause a problem where if you're producing, in my situation, we were manufacturing a certain cable item that was used in data communication equipment. And when my customer who placed $1 million order worked out a deal with a third party to help them with their production because their numbers were going up for producing, turned to me and said, what we place with you, they're going to place with you as well. So that threw into everything when it came to the manufacturing projections, all the material requirements, labor, scheduling, everything. And so it's a great problem to have, but it can cause chaos in your company. So you have to have some flexibility to make sure that, first off, if you have the weird type of year that maybe you didn't expect to have, and what I mean by that is an increase in revenue just through the roof for whatever reason, or the opposite, where you might have a market turn down immediately. Think of the pandemic. We went into the beginning of 2020. All of a sudden, 15 days to stop the spread turned into a little longer than 15 days. And you had businesses that were impacted severely. A lot of the goals that were set did not really bake in going into 2020 any type of shutdowns, restrictions, or pandemic issues. So you have to have the ability to be flexible. And when you're working with some of the company executives, are you finding that mindset being more flexible when it comes to goals or more rigid like it was in the past?
Definitely more flexible. After what we have gone through in the past year, more than year and a half, executives are definitely more flexible. And think about it, they're looking at, okay, were their salespeople able to get out? No, they weren't. Did they know how to use technology? So they had to learn. Some salespeople had to learn how to use technology and Zoom and everything. So the executives are definitely more flexible now because of the pandemic than they were before. When you were talking about how you have that increase. Well, think about real estate right now. Real estate agents, they had a fabulous year because there wasn't much on the market and everything was being sold, and it was being sold for over listing price. 3 years out, that's probably not going to be the case. And houses probably are not going to go, above 20% above asking price. So in 3 years, that would not make sense to make those same projections as what's happening now. So taken into consideration, I started in the housing industry back in 2008, 2009. So, what happened? The housing industry was, they had an all-time low. So if I expected to sell, 3 times my sales quota in 2008, 2009, 2010, that would not have made sense compared to maybe 2011, 2012. So we have to look at what's going on in the economy in order to make not only doable goals, but the stretch goals. So in your case, if they would have came back and said, well, Jim, you did this last year, you can do it again this year, that's a BHAG goal. That's definitely a BHAG goal. And all that's doing is frustrating you and everybody else.
Yeah, I think with 2020 for businesses, there was a lot of reinvention that went on. And, a good example where you would have an organization and maybe that's involved in education and certification, and you're dealing with more hands-on physical type of training activity, to be able to do a hybrid where you're doing both online learning and combined with, when you can, having the ability to go on site or show up and do your practicals. So there was a lot of ways to reinvent. Thank God for the technology we have today. Yes. And then it was relatively an easy transition. You imagine if this would have happened, let's say 20 years ago, we would not have the Zooms and the technology to be able to do it. We would literally be, the telephone would be really it at that point, and email and some basic stuff like that. But it's interesting that where technology is really, and now that we're seeing too, a blended work now where you're both doing virtual and you're doing in the office, some travel where you need to, but the job can get done. So, when I'm looking at and talking about the flexibility and resetting goals, and also have that ability. You have to be adaptable. What I'm saying about really with that is that maybe you're not talking about saying, okay, forget it, we're not going to hit this goal, let's make an easier goal. It's looking at your goal and saying, where could we make adjustments, changes? Maybe it's focusing on a different product. Maybe we need to change our marketing strategy. And we've seen a lot of that during 2020, where you had companies that would now change the way they advertise, the way they would market. And they were taking, I don't want to say taking advantage of the situation, but there were really interesting ways to kind of, make light, not really make light, just make lemons, I guess, make lemonade out of lemons. And so those stories are out there, and they're amazing and inspirational when it comes to how companies were very adaptable. MJ, this has been a really good conversation. I really like this opportunity to bring up a lot of my past, and you were talking about your customers as well. Could we talk a little bit about, let's talk about Bounce Up with MJ Callaway, your broadcast series.
I would love to. Before I do that, can I
ahead.
leave one last thought?
Definitely.
So think about, I'm going to go back to when we were talking about leads. If we think about our leads and also our customers as a gift, it's a gift. And think about it, when you get a gift, you're shaking it, you're looking at it, you're holding it, and you're curious. Like, you're curious, what is inside that gift? And if we look at leads, and if we looked at prospecting, we look at, potential buyers as a gift with that curiosity, it can open up so many more opportunities for us.
Excellent.
So with that, and I'll bounce into Bounce Up. So Bounce Up broadcast is on every Thursday at noon. Jim is my co-host, and there are times where Jim and I go back and forth on themes and on topics related to business. And there are also other times where we are bringing in guests or panelists to help us with those topics. When you want to think about Bounce Up, it is bouncing up higher and stronger around results, resilience, and revenue.
Very good. And then for people who are looking to get in contact with you, social media, websites, email.
I am on all social media, MJ Callaway. Sometimes it's MJ Callaway Sales. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and my website is mjcallaway.com. And thinking about Callaway, like Callaway Golf. There's a lot of free resources on my website, so check under resources, and you can download those. There are some about bouncing up. It's about resilience. There's also a lot about communication and sales.
I'm a subscriber, and I enjoy getting your weekly email newsletters that come out. And I highly encourage everyone to check out MJ's profile on LinkedIn, and make sure that you follow her Bounce Up broadcast every Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time. A lot of great topics, and it sounds like 2022 is going to be a really fun and interesting year for you.
Definitely. Looking forward to 2022. I got my goals in place.
And everyone, please get your goals in place, because time is running out. It's now the middle of December. MJ, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. So appreciate being on.
All right. And everybody have a good evening, and we'll see you next time.